Ceann Corla. I also just want to, on behalf of all of the Social Democrats team, thank Julie for everything, and I want to wish you huge congratulations on your retirement. Minister, before I begin, I just want to say that my thoughts are also with those on the Summit Flotilla, including members of the Oireachtas, who were hit by drone strikes overnight. This is just another example of Israel operating in blatant breach of international law, and there has to be consequences. Minister, my question for you today is quite simple. What are you doing about large supermarkets who refuse to report their profits? Increases in grocery prices have been rapid and relentless. I know that, you know that. Everybody doing their weekly shop knows that. And I think we all have a fairly good idea why. Large supermarket chains are gouging their customers, but we can't prove it. Why? Because they refuse to declare their profits and your government refuses to make them. Minister, St Vincent de Paul have said that nearly half their calls this year were about a single issue, groceries. And according to Barnardos, 4 in 10 parents are skipping meals or eating less to feed their children. Minister, Ireland's a wealthy country. It shouldn't be such a struggle just to survive, because that's what we're talking about. The cost of simply existing in this country. Putting a roof over your head, keeping the lights on, putting food on the table. More and more people are finding life completely unaffordable. Minister, the grocery market in Ireland is worth at least €10 billion a year, and yet there is little to no transparency about their profits. Today, it was announced that Dunnes in the North increased their profits last year by a whopping 44%. That is a staggering increase at a time when so many people are struggling. We don't know what the profit margins are in this jurisdiction because Dunnes don't have to tell us. It doesn't have to file annual accounts, and the government refuses to do anything about it. Minister, many of us have long suspected that consumers in Ireland are being gouged by large supermarket chains, but without full transparency on profit levels, it is very difficult to prove this. The profits announced by Dunnes in the North today do tell us one thing, though, that business for them is booming. But for their customers, it's another story. Minister, the Social Democrats have now been highlighting this issue for years. We've asked you to force large supermarket chains to publish their profit and to give more powers to the food regulator and the consumer regulator so they can investigate and prevent supermarkets from ripping off their customers.
Thank you, Deputy.
But the government has done nothing.
Minister to respond.
Minister, what are you going to do to address this issue?
Thanks very much, Deputy, for your question. And your statement that the government is doing nothing isn't in fact correct. The Minister who has responsibility for this area and who has been engaging with the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission is Minister Alan Dillon. And Minister Dillon met with the CCPC in June. He's asked them to conduct an analysis of the Irish grocery retail sector with a view to determining whether there is evidence of excessive pricing. They're expected to report back in the coming weeks. And this week we've seen another example of the work of the CCPC in protecting consumers, a warning letter to the motor industry. But we feel the powers of the CCPC should be strengthened further. And if you know the programme for government, you'll see that we committed in the programme for government to doing so, to giving more powers to the CCPC. And I know that this is something that is being prioritised in the Department of Enterprise by Ministers Burke and Minister Dillon and indeed Minister Troy. Obviously, the measures government is taking are designed to reduce the cost what's the cost of groceries in Ireland. I have to say, however, we have a very competitive grocery sector in Ireland, Deputy. We will try to ensure through government interaction with the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission that prices are brought down and that the most competitive prices are available. We also need to recognise that people can get cheaper prices elsewhere, and I'd urge people to engage in competitive assessment of the prices that are available. I also think in terms of the proposals you're putting forward, you were saying that Social Democrats have been advocating that we require the grocery sector to publish profits. Bring forward a piece of legislation and government will look at it. Obviously, there are reasons why certain companies aren't required to publish profits, predominantly because they are private companies that are not required to publish information such as that. If you believe that that should be changed, bring forward legislation in terms of what should be set out in the Companies Act, and government will give consideration to it. It's obviously a complicated issue, Deputy, in terms of trying to intervene and impose obligations on certain companies that are involved in the grocery business, as opposed to other companies that are involved elsewhere. So it's obviously necessarily going to be the case that whatever company that your legislative proposal would engage with, that would have to apply across the board to all private companies. But I would speak again to the relevant ministers in respect of it. I'm aware of the profits that are being made in the grocery sector, but government is working on it and is engaged with the CCPC, will continue to engage in it. But if you want a legislative change, I would urge you and the Social Democrats to put forward amending legislation, and government will give consideration to it.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Kearns.
Minister, the fact of the matter is that Dunstore's operation in the north has recorded a 44% increase in profits. Let that sink in. And you can't tell me what their increase in profits is in this jurisdiction, because Dunnes, the country's biggest supermarket chain, doesn't have to be transparent here. In an interview with the Sunday Independent in July, Simon Harris said supermarkets should publish their profits. He said, the more transparency, the better. Why wouldn't they be transparent? What do they have to hide? He said this just a few days after voting against the Social Democrats' motion calling for just that. The hypocrisy is staggering. Minister, yourself and Deputy Dillon are in government, so you can do more than have meetings and narrate the situation. You can intervene. You can change the law, you can empower the regulators, and you can force supermarkets to publish their profits. The question is, why are you acting like a cabinet of bystanders, narrating the problem instead of actually doing anything about it?
Minister to respond.
Thanks, Deputy. Deputy, I should point out that in order for this to happen, the law in the country has to change. Law can be changed. The entity that changes the law is the Oireachtas. The government proposes laws and government has the advantage it has a majority in the House of the Oireachtas. But there is nothing stopping opposition parties from bringing forward legislation that you believe will change the law. Motions are easy to put forward. Motions are easy to bring forward, and they get
Deputy O'Callaghan, your leader
the hard work is done when it comes to drafting legislation. And if you believe that legislation should be introduced to change the law, come forward with that legislation. And I also think we need to be careful about vilifying grocers. There were a lot of grocers in Ireland that provide a lot of employment to people. Of course they make profits. It's our job to ensure that their profits are not excessive and that we curtail them. The best way we think to do that is through the CCPC and engagement with the Consumer Protection Entity. The more competition there is in the business, prices come down. Prices come down is for the benefit of the consumer.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Deputy Ken O'Flynn.
Thank you, Concordia. And on behalf of Independent Ireland, I'd like to be associated with the remarks wishing Julie the very best in her family and a long and successful retirement and a happy future. Julie has been keeping the group of Independent Ireland well-rounded over the last number of years, I have to say. So it's your fault, Julie. It's not mine. Minister, free primary education is guaranteed under the Article 42.4 of the Constitution. Yet today, in my constituency of Cork North Central and across Ireland, it is anything but free. A coalition of every majority education body, school managers, principals, teachers and staff have written to the Minister for Education and to your government to say that schools are now in a financial crisis. The facts are stark. An analysis of 707 schools show that heating costs since 2019 have gone up 83%. Water and refuse bills are up 51%. Utility costs have nearly doubled in expenditure from 3.3 to 6.1. Accounting and auditing costs are gone up 58%. School management systems, a staggering 199%. 199% seems outrageous. And the average primary school now faces a 17,000 deficit on day-to-day running costs. 17,000 deficit on day-to-day running costs, Minister, not weekly, daily. Minister, you and your government have increased the basic capitation grant from €200 to €224 per pupil this September, but principals say the real costs of running a school are far closer to €300 per pupil. This is why this coalition of educators calling for immediate increases of at least €299 have come together. And also looking for supports for the ICT, the minor works and ancillary services, and looking for supports for that. Right now in my constituency, in schools in Glanmire, Ballyvolane, Mayfield, Knocknaheeny, Ballincollig, Mallow, Blarney, and I'm sure across your constituency also, Minister, we have people out there fundraising